Hello again, everyone, and thank you for joining the Brain 202, Gardening and Evolving Your Brain. My name is Matt Caton, and the purpose of today's webinar is to give everyone the next level of training in using the Brain software. Every Friday, we teach a Brain 101 class, and the purpose of the Brain 101 is to give you an introduction into the application, to talk about really the basics behind creating thoughts, adding notes and file attachments and web links to those thoughts, adding data, and connecting them, syncing your brain to the cloud, etc. Well, today's class, the Brain 202, is going to take you to the next level. I'm going to be talking about some more advanced features of the application. So this is particularly exciting for me to share some of these features with you. I actually went through the attendee list and noticed many names of people that I see on the Brain 101 from time to time or just recently. So I'm so happy that you're ready to start looking at some more advanced features of the application. Now, if you feel that what I'm covering today is too advanced, too complex, then again, feel free to sign up for a Brain 101 class and really reel it back in. Take it back to basics behind creating thoughts and adding data to your brain, your digital brain. Again, you can always take a Brain 101 class at any time. Today's webinar is also being recorded, so you can go back and re-watch today's webinar at a later date once you've had that basic training. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to be sharing two different brains with you today, and these particular brains have aged. They have gathered a lot of content and a lot of data over the years. I personally have brains with well over 5,000 to 10,000 thoughts, and I know that there are brains out there in the wild, brain databases, that have upwards of 100,000, 500,000 plus thoughts. That's a lot of content, so it makes sense that you want to display your information and access your information in something that's easy to understand and gain knowledge from. So we're going to be going through two brains that have become a little bit cluttered, a little bit messy in some areas, and I want to share with you some tips and tricks on how to clean those areas of your brain up for faster, easier navigation within your digital brain. Now, very quickly, pieces of information in the brain are what we call thoughts. And a thought can be anything from a placeholder. Here you can see I'm on a thought called personal life. And down below, I've got all the different things that interest me, information about my family, my pets, health information, fitness, travel, etc., all accessible. But I've got a lot of thoughts to choose from. If I'm looking for a particular thought on going on vacation and I need to be boarding my dog. So do I look at dog boarding? I can scroll through here, vets. That's not it. It's actually in here somewhere, dog boarding. And I'm not seeing it right off the bat. So I'm going to end up doing a search. I'm going to be clicking around. There it is, pet sitter. I labeled it differently. So the thought that I was looking for was my pet sitter, and this thought would be then connected to all my different options, phone numbers and the data, etc. We're not going to be focused so much on the data and the notes and the file attachments today. So I'm going to minimize that content. I'm just going to simply click on the buttons between the two screens, between the Plex and where we keep all of our notes and file attachments, to go full screen with the Plex. It's time to clean this area of my brain up. So the first thing I notice is I have a lot of names in this area of my brain. So these are all my family members, my wife's family. I want to create a separate area just uniquely for my family. If I share common interests, obviously with my family, I'll still be able to make those connections, but I'll have one place to go to look up emails, addresses for uncles, aunts, cousins, etc. So I'm going to click and create a new jump thought off of personal life for family. And this is going to be a placeholder where I will link all of my family members. And I see them very quickly and easily down below. I'm going to draw now from the family child gate to my son August and make that connection, and down to dad, And hopefully the GoToMeeting is keeping up with what I'm clicking on the screen. So you can see if I hover over family, you can see I now have 2 child thoughts underneath family that go down to Dad and August. I've got a few more, so I'm going to quickly add those. Hopefully the GoToMeeting can keep up. I'll create a link to Lisa, Laura, Marty, and Max. Let's see if I have any. There's Spencer and my mom. I'll link those 2 as well. So very quickly, I've linked some of these people. If I click now on family, you can see all of my child thoughts down below are my family members. So great, a very easy way to get to my this particular area of my brain will grow over time. I could create another link to all my friends, etc. But I don't want those linked directly under personal life. Those will now be linked directly under family. So I can go back and simply right-click on a link that I don't want and select unlink. So I've got about 9, 10 to unlink. I just right-click. And let me just make sure you're seeing this on your screen. I right-click on the thought. There it is. There's a little bit of lag time between what I'm clicking on and what's being broadcast. So I'll be sure to take my time here so you can see that I'm just simply right-clicking and unlinking for these thoughts. So in a matter of minutes, I've moved all of these thoughts from one area under personal life. They now have a new home right here underneath my family thought. Unlink and unlink. So take your time with that. It can be a little tedious. In this scenario, I had looks like 9 different thoughts to do, but you can see I got through that very quickly. And it didn't really make much of an impact, but still I know in the future where to go to find links for all of my family members, to look up their emails, to leave notes about their birth dates, etc., all in the notes section of my brain. In my personal brain, those of you that have taken my Brain 101 class, you know my own personal brain is also my, it's a CRM system. It's all of my contacts. It is phone numbers, emails, addresses, etc. So I've got a lot of different phone numbers in my family. I can't keep track of them all in my own head, so I keep them right there in my brain. Let's select another area. I see a thought here for music. So music is a personal hobby of mine. I keep track of bands that I like, etc. I've got a lot of personal hobbies, sports, technology. I think I should have a category for hobbies and bring all of these together. So now I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I am going to create my new thought, hobbies. And this is an interesting trick that the brain does. If you click and drag a thought that's visible on the screen around the current active thought, the brain simply knows that you're trying to reconnect or reestablish a new relationship. So let's take gardening, for example. Gardening is a personal hobby of mine, and my wife and I love to garden, and notice that when I click and drag gardening below hobbies, the brain relinks for me. So it's no longer linked to personal life. I've now did a little drag and drop over from the sibling thought area directly underneath hobbies. If I keep going farther to the left, the brain thinks that I'm trying to make a jump thought off of hobbies. That's not what I want. I want to drag it directly below, and now I'll finally release the mouse trigger, and I very quickly moved gardening over as a child of hobbies rather than a sibling. So this is a faster process. And it works out great since the thoughts are on the screen at the same time. I'll do more scenarios where the thoughts are not on the screen at the same time in just a moment. But now, art and culture, that's an interesting hobby of mine. Health and fitness, I've got a lot of health and fitness stuff, so I think I'll wait and create a health area. Maybe I'll do that one next. There's my music thought, click and drag. Now I can just scroll through these sibling thoughts over on the right. Restaurants, again, that'll go under food, snorkeling and diving, I love it. And sports, there's technology. Again, I can really quickly click and drag. Here's a bunch of travel things. That is a hobby of mine as well, but I think that needs to have its own placeholder. And here again, it's really personal choice. It can be in both locations. I'm going to wait and create a new category specifically for travel. And what I'm reading, I love reading, so I'll click and drag that underneath hobbies as well. Let's go back to personal life. And again, we've got a lot of thoughts there. I think I need to go a little bit further to really clean this up. And in the process, I'll share a few more options that you have. So first, I'm going to quickly create, I mentioned earlier that, well, I'll create health and fitness. I already have a thought for health and fitness, so I'm just actually going to call this health. I've got a lot more than just that health and fitness. So underneath health, I will drag that health and fitness thought. I've got a lot of content there. But also I have healthy eating, and I'll scroll down. I've got a lot of, let's see, restaurants. Is that under health and fitness? Maybe I'll create another area under health called food. And now I'm going to move healthy eating down underneath food. So as I go, I can make these subtle changes. I can always go back and change them later, but I really like that food category. So I'm going to go back under personal life and find all of my food thoughts. Restaurants, for example, that falls under food. But now, because I've buried food underneath my health thought, it's not visible on the screen. It actually is. If you look around at my screen really quickly, you'll see somewhere that food is appearing, and that's in the past thought list. So the past thought list down below, I really have my brain expanded right now, so I see a lot of thoughts in my past thought list. These are the 200 most recently clicked on thoughts. It's great for navigation, but it's also great for today's topic of rearranging thoughts and reconnecting relationships. Restaurants falls under food. There it is in my past thought list. Now, if I were just to drop this link right now, let's see if I have another food thought before I release my mouse trigger. I've got health, banking. I see some more family members I'll need to go back and fix. Oh, there's my recipes. So I'll do it for my recipes. So restaurants is now going to be connected to food. I simply release my mouse trigger and notice that it has both parents, personal life and food. Restaurants falls under food. Trying to clean up my personal life by recategorizing. So I right click and unlink it. Now let's go back, navigate up to personal life, and remember I saw that my recipes. Here's a really, really great tip if you are cleaning up your brain, and this is the perfect scenario of when I would use this trick, and that's simply by holding down the shift key, you can create an exclusive parent. So recipes, once again, I can link it to food. Now, I can click and drag down to food in the past thought list, or here's another tip, I can just start typing. Let's say I don't happen to notice it appearing down there, and I say, oh, I want to link my recipes up to food. If I just type in the letter F, for example, I am presented with all thoughts in this brain that start with, that have a word that start with the letter F, and there's food right there in front of me. So this is the brain's existing thought list. I often do show this in the Brain 101. I think it's really important. So many times you're creating a thought in your brain and you don't even realize your organic brain is forgotten, but your digital brain never forgets. So anything that you've already created under that topic is going to show up in my existing thought list. And of course there's food, but in this scenario, I want to move my thought from personal life over to food. So I hold down the shift key and double click on food, and that's called the exclusive parent trick. So I've made a new parent thought for my recipes, which is food. So notice my recipes no longer appears here under personal life. Here it is in my past thought list, and I can clearly see that my recipes falls under food. So that's by holding down the shift key. You remove any existing parent links, and you're just making a new parent for that thought. Maybe not new, a different parent. The food already existed. It's a different and it's a unique exclusive parent. So that's with the shift key. So another trick, I'm going to really quickly create another category. I've got a lot of house repair, home and repairs, etc. So I want a unique category for my house. I'll create my house thought. And now I'm actually going to add thoughts into the selection box. We're going to be using the selection box quite a bit today, so now's a great time to introduce you to the selection box. To open your selection box on a Windows machine, simply Control-click on any thought. On a Mac, you would Command-click. So I'm going to Control-click on anything related to my house, which is house repairs, Control-click, and notice that it adds this thought here into the selection box. There's many different ways to populate the selection box, and I'll try to share them all with you today. I can also Control-click on a gate, and it adds all thoughts connected to that gate as child thoughts are now added into the selection box. That's not what I want. I'm not moving all of these thoughts into my house category. So I Control-click again, and it removes them from the selection box. In this case, it was all thoughts in the selection box, so the selection box is gone. So the selection box will only appear when content has been added into it. It's very temporary, and it's for us to capture a group of thoughts and make a change in mass to those thoughts. Very, very relevant for today's topic. So Control-click on house repairs. There's my kitchen remodel. Paint colors, that goes into my house thought. And just scan home renovations, so I'm keeping track of contractors there. I think that should do it. Now, what I like to do is go and connect these thoughts into their new home first before I disconnect them. If I were to disconnect these thoughts and then I get sidetracked, I get a phone call, or I have to answer an email, or I have to switch brains or close the application, I've lost those. I mean, I could manually go through and find them with the search, but it's easier, I think, to navigate over to my home thought, this new thought that I just created, and I right-click in the selection box. We'll be spending a lot of time in this menu today, and I scroll down to link these thoughts as children of house. So 4 thoughts have been linked as children of house. I can now navigate back to personal life. I right-click in the selection box again, and I unlink the selection. And this is an abbreviated description of what it's going to do. It's going to unlink the selection from the current active thought. So it doesn't unlink them from everything, just unlinks from the current active thought. And it gets rid of those thoughts so that underneath house, I see I've got those new 4 thoughts. And you'll also notice while I'm here underneath this house thought, I'm giving just a moment for the screen to catch up. There we go. So these 4 thoughts that are underneath the house thought, notice that they've got the little marching ants going around them. It's a little animated circle. Anytime you add something into the selection box, you'll see this animated sort of halo around that particular thought. So if I Control-click on more thoughts, dog photos, Dave and Molly, they get that animated feature as well. So I can continue navigating through a brain. In some scenarios, I'm selecting thoughts to copy them, to paste into another brain, or to paste into an outline, etc. So I can continue navigating and then very selectively Control-click on a thought, and all thoughts that I've Control-clicked on added to the selection box, they're going to get this outline appearing behind them. So very easy to know in a brain, these 2 thoughts are currently in my selection box. And notice when I close my selection box, those thoughts are gone. So let's go through that process really quickly to finish cleaning this area of my brain up. I see a lot of like banking, insurance, so I'm going to create a thought for finance. And I will now select all of my finance thoughts, once again with the Control-clicking. So banking, I Control-click, and retirement planning, investments, insurance, these are all going to go underneath finance. So in this case, I'll do the opposite. I'll do what I told you I don't typically do. Right-click and unlink selection. So now you can see that if I were to navigate away from my brain and come back to it, I'd be like, oh, what was I working on? I was cleaning some area of my brain up. I can't remember. My finance area would go missing all of these thoughts elsewhere in my brain. They're still connected to other thoughts, and I can do a search to find them, etc. I can even run a recent report of recent changes to find those particular thoughts. But in this case, I'm going to right-click and select to link as children. So there we go. And now it's time to finalize this project. I still have some travel and pet information. So travel. And in this case, I'll click on travel. Since the list is getting smaller and smaller, I can start doing this with my drag and drop procedure. So rather than control clicking, sort of switch gears, and I went back to just dragging and dropping thoughts underneath travel and airline rewards. I keep track of all of those. Scroll down to upcoming travel plans, urban travel. And I think earlier I categorized snorkeling and scuba diving underneath my hobbies or underneath sports. That's travel as well. Let me see if I can find it. So I'll just type in a few letters. It's not under scuba, so maybe I just have it under snorkeling and diving. There it is. So notice I just typed in SN. I could also type in S space D. So all thoughts that contain a word that start with S and a word that start with D. That's a really neat little trick. Snorkeling and diving. And that falls now underneath travel. So that falls underneath travel and hobbies. And I'm going to keep that in both locations, regardless of how I'm thinking about my scuba diving hobby for travel or just my hobby. I can still find the content that I'm going for. So that's a really great benefit, is having a thought appear with multiple links. It's not duplicating the thought at all. I just have multiple paths in order to get to that thought. My wife also is very interested in snorkeling and diving, so I can link a jump thought over to Laura. So regardless, once again, of how I'm thinking about snorkeling, I can still find the information in this brain that I'm looking for. And I think my final category to create is for my dog, my pets. So I'll create a pets thought and bring in my vets and dog photos. I am very involved in animal adoption. I love it. And there's my pet sitter. And I think now it's just a matter of cleaning this area of my brain up. I've got upcoming expenses. That goes under finance. So I can always go back and review at any time. Activate finance will move upcoming expenses and finances over there. There's Dave and Molly, my in-laws. So I'll go back to, or here, I'll click on Dave and Molly and link them up to my family. So hold down the shift key, and Dave and Molly now fall under family and are no longer under personal life. What an amazing difference. If you recall, and I took a screenshot in case you don't, here's my new personal life, much more organized and friendly and approachable. I know where to go for my finance thoughts, where to go for hobbies, for travel, etc. I took a screenshot before we got started today of this area of this particular brain, and we'll just do a little side-by-side comparison. On the left, we have the original brain, and on the right, after it looks like just 20 minutes of changes, we've really cleaned this area of the brain up. So can still find what I'm looking for. It's just one additional click away. Another feature that I really want to share with you is being able to highlight areas of your brain to draw your focus or draw your attention. It's an important process, I think, in a very large brain. I could have gone into this brain and just made a couple of the key thoughts that I go to often bright yellow or with a fancy icon or something of that nature. But this was getting a little too cluttered. In fact, I couldn't even see all the thoughts on the screen at one time. Notice down below, previously, I had a scroll bar, so I had to scroll over for a couple of different columns of thoughts to get to what I was looking for. But if I do want to highlight an area of my brain, let's say for this area under personal life, here in 2019, maybe I really want to get my finances in order. Now, it's not too hard to see in this structure, but I want to be even reminded when I'm clicking past this area of my brain, hey, are you staying on top of your financing? There's so many reviews I could be doing of my investments, make sure everything is in order, check my expenses, etc. I want to highlight this area. So I am going to Alt-click on the finance thought. Now, you can click on the active thought and it opens up the thought properties, or you can alt-click and get the same effect. So you'll open up the thought properties for any thought on the screen by alt-clicking. Now, I have my properties window expanded. There's a little arrow button. I like to expand it. The brain remembers that setting, so all of my properties windows open with this expansion. It's quite simple. I can see the date that thought was created, modified, but I love having access to the history. And I use this history button quite often in some of my large, even very old brains. Every action that you do in the brain is recorded. So when content was deleted, added, if you changed a thought type or a tag, when you added that note or that new attachment. So here you can see I linked it to personal life. It got linked to banking, retirement planning, was linked all here into this finance thought. So thoughts that were linked to it when that thought was created. Obviously, all these changes just happened today, but you can see the value of this thought if you're keeping track of a work project and you want to go in and find out how this project has evolved over time. You can really see the history of a thought. And I'll do that in one of my older brains when we get there in just a moment. But for now, I simply want to make a couple of very simple changes to this finance thought to make it stand out. I'm going to start with changing the color of the font. So let's say I want a nice bright yellow. That doesn't show up too well on the light blue background, so I'll change the background color. Something very dark. That kind of has a nice little pop to it. And I'll click on the little square box here. This is the icon for this thought. I like to select stock icons. I've got my own customized stock icon. This is a little bit more of an advanced feature if you ever want to customize this particular area of the brain. Maybe I'll have time to demo this. Let me know in the question panel if this really interests you, and I'll come back to it. But I have my own personal icons that I like for the brains that I create. And business is perfect. I'm in the business category for finance. So let's just add some pictures of some Benjamins. And that has a nice little sort of look and feel to it. I've got a stack of money there on my finance thought. And I'm simply going to be reminded in this area of the brain that that's sort of a key thought. In some brains, I have got a project that I'm working on. It's got a lot of moving parts, but there's certain thoughts that are most important. Maybe I've got sort of the project outline in an Excel document, and it blends in with the rest of the projects down below. Change the color, change the icon for that. So you've got a grouping of large thoughts, and your eye is immediately drawn to one thought in particular that's most important in that grouping. So this is a great, easy way to accomplish that. Another way to accomplish that is by assigning thought types to thoughts where they inherit certain qualities, a color, a background, or an icon. And let's go ahead and do that in my business brain that I'm going to share with you today. So we'll say goodbye to my personal area of this particular brain. Before I do, I want to share with you that I am going to share with everyone here on the call today a copy of this particular brain. We've got this brain that I'm using right now available online. It's a very vanilla brain. You may have noticed there's not a lot of notes or file attachments or web links. It's just placeholders where data can be added. I customized this a bit and added my own family members, and you can do the same. You can download this brain, which is sort of a vanilla template for hobbies, personal life, interests, your work, your goals that you're working on in your life. You can customize and make this your own. So it's a really fun brain to play around with or use as the starting point for your own brain. And I'll share a link with everyone so you can download a sample of this brain in a thank you email that will go out to everyone that's joined the call today. So let me go ahead and jump now into my business brain. And I went right to a particular thought. I demo this thought once again in my Brain 101 classes quite often because I've got a lot of nice sample content, web page that loads up as a file attachment, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, etc., all load up right here in the content window associated with one of my clients, Instant Dynamics Corporation. But most importantly, I'm going to navigate down into one of my active projects. Notice if I mouse over my reach out thought down below, this is an active project that I'm working on with Instant Dynamics Corporation. And if you notice, when I click, once again, same scenario. We've got a lot of content down there. This reach out ad campaign started all the way back in 2017. It's still going in 2019. And maybe in our most recent meeting, we discussed sort of revamping this project, bringing it back to life and sort of breathing some new life into the project itself. So it's time for me to clean this area of the brain up. I'm going to be visiting this thought often in the future, and I want to make sure that all of my information is easily accessible. Once again, I could create some sub-thoughts, some subcategories, and pile everything up. In this case, I don't want to do that, but I still want to be able to look at this content and know quickly I've got a lot of meeting notes scattered throughout this cluster of child thoughts. I've got a couple of presentations. I've got some other documents and information. So let's clean it up again. Once more, I will minimize the content. I'm not so worried right now about the file attachments and notes, etc. I just want to know exactly what it is I'm looking at. And I am going to do that with a thought type. You notice when I talked about this reach out ad campaign, it's a current active project for this customer. And when I mouse over, I see active project. And if you look at the other thoughts underneath Instant Dynamics, I have all together now and see the world, other active projects. And those are being identified for me as a thought type. There's many benefits to adding thought types into the brains that you create. And it's really just another category or classification of that particular thought. Notice when I activate reach out, I can see that it's connected to the active project thought type. This is optional. I can right click on any thought type in my brain and decide whether I want this viewable in the Plex. Sometimes I don't want to be able to see that connection. It's maybe cluttering up the screen if I've got a lot of parent thoughts above this particular thought. I just want to be able to hover over that thought to see that it's an active project and have my little active project puzzle piece icon. So that is all accomplished with a thought type. And I'm going to be using thought types to classify my information down below. So the first area I see, I've got a lot of different meeting notes. I skip down, there's more meeting notes. I look over to the right, June 2018 meeting, etc. Luckily, they're all named meeting in the thought name, but in some scenarios, I'll even add one more. Let's say we're planning the March 2019 meeting, and I just type in March 2019. Well, was that an invoice that I was putting together for March, or what is March 2019? It's a meeting that we're going to be having, and therefore I'll have notes on that thought for that meeting. And so I want to group all of these together to visually identify them with a thought type. Let's get started. I'm going to control click on September 2018. Oops, not control click, I'm sorry, alt click to open up the thought properties. And if I click on type, I can see a listing of all available thought types in this brain. So it's very easy to assign thoughts to existing thought types. They just simply show up in the list. You can also right click and assign a thought type that way. In this scenario, my meeting note thought type does not exist. So I'm going to create it from scratch. And even if I start typing in a few letters, I'll be reminded if I already have that. Once again, the brain's existing thought list will continue to benefit me. So meeting notes, no, I'm not seeing it. I'll capitalize that. Meeting note. And I'll create a new thought type called meeting note. So now when I click on that thought, I'll see it actually linked up to meeting note. And I can do that for a bunch of thoughts down below. So once again, I'll use that control click for all of my different meetings. There's meetings. And March 2017 is going to be a meeting. There will be meeting notes. So I'll add that to my list. I think that looks pretty good. I can always come back and add more later or change it at a later date. And I right click over in the selection box. I'm waiting now to see on your screen when you see my right click. There it is. And I'm going to change all of their thought types to meeting notes. There it is. So now at first glance, you might be saying, well, it grouped them all together at the beginning, but it's still, you've got to read the thought name to see that it's a meeting note. So I want to apply a certain look and feel to all of my meeting notes so that I can easily identify them. So now I'll just use the search up here to go to my meeting note thought type. And just with any native thought within the brain, thought types and thought tags, you can apply icons and color codes to them as well. Notice right away, meeting note has a circular border around it as opposed to the square border. And the thought tag is going to have what we call chamfered edges. The corners are cut off a little bit. But on a meeting note, I'm going to click to open up its thought properties and select the stock icon once again. So I think I probably need just a little pad of paper for my meeting notes. I would think I'd see that here in my business category. If I don't, I'll scroll down to this user interface category that I have that I really like. And oh, this is nice. I've got a little pencil with a piece of paper. That's just perfect. And let's change the look and feel of the sort of the background, the text as well. So I want to flip these. I want white text on a dark background. I think that looks absolutely perfect. That's going to make it stand out. And notice by applying these changes to the meeting note thought type, it is then been applied to all thoughts that are meeting notes. So down below, if I click to go back into my reach out ad campaign, I can easily see all of my meeting notes. They're not only grouped together in a cluster of child thoughts, but they're easily identifiable. Little pencil with a square and the different color background, perfect. Now I've got another category, so there's still a lot of documentation down here, but some of these documents are presentations. I want to bring those to my attention as well. So once again, I'll just select one thought. In this case, I'm going to right click and select to create a thought type. Presentation, I don't see it in my list, so I'll create a new thought type. Excuse me. So the winning edge is now a presentation thought type. Really quickly, I'll go in and modify the look and feel. Maybe in this case, I just want a nice light yellow background, same color text, but I will give it an icon. In this case, I'll go to my people, since it's usually me giving the presentation. I've got a people thought type, and I'll just add a little person icon there. Excuse me, I've got a little tickle in my throat. Let's return then back to my presentation. And here's a great example. I'm on the winning edge. I just classified this or typed this as a presentation thought type. It falls under reach out. It's also one of our older archive presentations that we still dust off from time to time. And it was used in an AT&T sales presentation as well. So it falls under many categories, but there I have visualized my presentation thought type. Now that I've assigned a color code to it and an icon, I really don't need this presentation appearing in the Plex. So I'm simply going to right click and remove. So it's not visible, but I can still see obviously the little icon and the winning edge there is showing up with that yellow background. So if I go back to reach out, I can go through my list and find, oh, this gray cube is a little graphic that I use for some of my presentations. Matt Quinn Photography, I often use him to put together photography for my presentations, and the Future of E-Solutions is a presentation as well. So I right click in the selection box, I control click to send them to the selection box, and I'll make all of these thought types as presentations. So this is cleaning up really, really nicely. I can easily see from all of my documents that pertain to Reach Out Ad Campaign, the specific meeting notes, my presentations, and let's say the rest is really just a bunch of different documents that I have, but some are more important than others. So I really want to classify a key document thought type as well. So this checklist number 2 is a key document. I'm going to right-click and set up a new thought type as key document. So there'll be just a couple of key documents. Once again, really quickly, let's change the color coding, etc. So I'll go under UI. I think I saw a key there earlier. This is perfect. I have this little gold key, and we'll give this some red text on a, is it too gaudy, red text on a blue background? I think that kind of works. That's fine. And my key documents then will really stand out. So clearly that is one of my key documents. So is my product comparison. So I'm just going to right-click on that thought and tell it that it's the thought type key document. So if a thought type is no longer a key document, I can always just simply right-click once again and go up to thought type and assign it as an untyped thought. So untyped is what a thought is by default. So at any time you've got a thought that you've just created, by default, it's going to be an untyped thought, unless you specify the thought type as you're creating it, which you certainly can do if that thought type already exists. In this case, whenever you're creating a new thought, it's going to be an untyped thought until you change it. And you can always go back and change it at any time. And remember that history, your history on each thought will tell you when a thought was changed to a thought type, what it was, when you changed it back, etc. You can always override thought type settings as well. So let's say I've got one more thought that is this Amazon server document. I'm going to right-click and select that this is a key type or a key document, Amazon server. But in this case, I really want this to stand out. This is very, very important, front and center. I'm getting some pricing on this new Amazon server. I'm visiting this thought every day. It is my most important document or thought in this grouping. So it's still a key document. I'm going to leave it as a key document, but I'm going to click to open up its thought properties. And if you see, if you look really closely, very faintly, it has that key there. That's because it's inherited the key graphic from a key document. I'm going to change this. I just want a gold star. So select an item, and I can go down to, there it is. I've got a gold star here in this category. So gold star, and just to be sure, I'm going to change the background. I'll make the background really dark blue, and then the text sort of a light red, sort of a contrasty version of what I set up. So notice I'm hovering over. It's still a key document, but settings on an individual thought will override their thought type settings. So even though this is a key document, I've customized just this thought settings to really, really make it stand out. And I can clearly see that this is a very, very important document. I've got my little gold star there, and it's right at the top of the list. So I can go back and modify that if I find that it's not so important at any point in the future. Another thing that you can do is reorder thoughts in a grouping of thoughts with what we call our hidden ordering list. So that's what I want to share with you now, is that we can specify what thoughts we want to show up first. So this Amazon server is still a key document for me, but more important than that, we've got a trip coming up for our presentation for Reach Out to Europe. So I've got a lot of things going on underneath this Europe thought. Corporate framework we'll be presenting. I'm going to have our schedule, the team members that are going with us, etc. So there's going to be a lot of content underneath this particular thought, the Europe presentations that are going to be happening, and the European tour to launch this ad campaign. I want this Europe thought. Personally, I want this Europe thought at the very top of the list. But my thought types are being grouped first, followed by all of my untyped thoughts. And notice this little grouping of untyped thoughts, if you look really closely, it's in alphabetical order. So the brain, again, by default, is going to put all your thought types first and then alphabetize those in each category. So at the end are my untyped lists or my untyped groupings, and there's Europe in that list. Let's move this to the front. I'm going to Alt-click on Europe to open up its properties. And you can also use this feature if you have a very specific flow. Let's say you are creating you're working on a project, and your projects always have step 1, step 2, step 3. You can name them with our hidden ordering list to make them appear in the Plex in that order. So let's say step 1 is to Xerox copy of everything. Well, Xerox starts with a Z. That's going to be at the end of the list, but not if you apply the hidden ordering list. And if you want the ordering list to appear, you can leave the dot off, but I add a dot and then a number, .01 Europe. By putting the dot there, it's actually going to hide the number for that particular thought in the Plex. And when I hit enter, notice that Europe now goes to the very top of its grouping. So here are all my untyped thoughts. Europe is at the very top of that list. So first we're going to go to Europe, and then maybe the next trip that we're going to go on is going to head to Canada. Again, notice Canada appears a little bit further down in the list. I want to move it to the top of its grouping. So I Alt-click, and I'll name this. This is another little trick that I like to add. Instead of saying .02, and again, I add the 0, just personal preference, because this way I can go all the way up to 99 if I want. Sometimes I'll add .100, .200, .300, but I leave spacing in case in between Europe and Canada we decide we're going to go to Switzerland. Well, I would have to rename Canada and Switzerland, but not if I say the first Europe was 01, so this will be 05, Canada. So notice that appears second in the list, and if we add Switzerland into the mix, or we'll just say I think I'd rather go to Hawaii. Since this is fictitious, I'll go someplace really warm and sunny. Oh, I should have done it while I was naming the thought, but Alt-click. Again, I'll add that numbered hidden ordering list, so .03. So again, by spacing them ahead of time, I can always come back and fit little pieces into the puzzle, new steps, without having to reorder or renumber everything down below it. So again, just a subtle little change in the thought names can regroup them in the way that is most important to me. Now, I can also, here I'll share with you, I can right-click on the background. I thought I had this turned on earlier. If you notice, I thought it was going to appear above Amazon server. But if I right-click on the background of my brain and go to Arrange By, you'll see that I'm arranging thoughts by type. So all of their types are being grouped together. So the untypes are at the end, and then the ordering list is within that type. But if I say Arrange by thought name, now it is strictly alphabetical. Oh, and this is interesting. We're going to find out something very, very interesting about this. Europe, Hawaii, there's September in between September and Canada. I bet if I Alt-click on September, I added a number, and sure enough, I did, a .04. Let's just take that off and hit enter. And now I've got that 1, 2, and 3 right there at the very top of my list. Europe, Hawaii, Canada appearing first in my grouping. And I can still very easily see which of my thoughts are meeting notes, which of my thoughts are key documents for this project that I'm working on, and which are presentation elements because of those inherited thought types with their color codes. And as I apply these thought types elsewhere in my brain, I can go to other client thoughts and see my meeting notes for them, or run a report. Let me actually add some meeting notes for another project. So I'm just going to go over to CommWorld, and maybe CommWorld has a project called Ideas, and meeting notes 2019. And as I'm creating the thought, I'll assign a thought type of meeting note. So there under ideas, I've got my 2019 meeting notes. If I have just had a crazy week and I need to review all of my most recently modified meeting note thoughts anywhere in my brain for any client, it's going to take me some time to navigate from client to client to client and look at their content and open up each active project and see which ones have meeting notes. But because I'm utilizing the thought type feature within the brain, I can run a report. So I'll open up my brain reports. And notice this is an alphabetical listing of all thoughts in this brain. This brain has over 1,000 thoughts in it. So I can navigate through my my list here, and if I really quickly want to get down to see what my director of IT is doing, I can click to activate that particular thought. But remember, I'm looking for recently activated meeting notes. So I'm going to change my filter. I've got filtering by thought types, so I'll put a checkbox by meeting notes, and there are all of my meeting notes. If I'm looking for meeting notes and key solutions or databases, I can check multiple different thought types to show a nice list. In this case, there are 24. If you look sort of in the background, I've got 24 thoughts that are either a meeting note or a database. In this case, it's just my meeting notes, so there they are. Now I'm looking for meeting notes that have just recently been edited. So I can say from a time frame, modified created, I'll say created within the last week, and there's just 2. On March 2019, remember I created that just today, and meeting notes 2019. So I can click. These are meeting notes for my ideas ad campaign, and this thought are my meeting notes for my reach out ad campaign. So I've run a report against that data to find all thoughts dispersed throughout my brain that are meeting notes that have been recently created within, actually these are thoughts that have been created within the past month, fall into this category. If I want to just look for modified meeting notes, go back and change that, and there are all the thoughts that have been modified because I applied that thought type that counts as a modification on that thought. So all these thoughts have been modified within the past month that are, again, meeting notes. So applying thought types to an existing brain not only gives you that really nice visual identity of the subject matter of that particular thought, but it helps out in so many other ways as well. Running reports against that data and navigating through your brain and understanding exactly what you're looking at. So this is sort of the even upper phase beyond reclassifying thoughts. If I go back to my all for one brain, let me just click on that tab. If I go back to my all for one brain, here again, it's really nice and orderly, and I've cleaned up this particular area of the brain so I can quickly find all my house thoughts, pet thoughts, hobby thoughts, etc. So a simplified cleaning of a messy area in my brain versus sort of more complex, but yet more advantageous in the long run. I can really find all of the data and information I'm looking for. And we've got just a few more minutes before the end of the hour, and I do see some questions coming in. So now's the time to present any questions that you may have. I'm going to share one more advanced feature of the brain with you before I jump into those questions. And that is, I've clarified the content of the data of each thought. Is it a meeting note? Is it a presentation? Is it a key document? But let's talk about the relationships between thoughts. You can see one showing up on my brain right here. So I've made a little note for this All Together Now ad campaign that expired in November of 2018. I still have the data there, so I can refer back to it very easily, but I can see that that particular All Together Now ad campaign expired, and that information is held actually on the link between the two thoughts. So I often like to apply links between people and thoughts as well. What is Donnie Lou's relationship to the Reach Out ad campaign? Lisa Swanson, I can see she's Tier 2 customer support. What's her relationship? What's Steve Gibson's relationship? If I click on one of these thoughts, Steve Gibson, for example, I can see he's also linked up to Dissent and Red Cross, a couple other a couple of other clients I have, and also I'm sort of giving away what I'm about to talk about, and that is link types. You can see that Steve Gibson is the manager for the Red Cross client, and he's working as the graphic artist for our other company or client, Descent. So by labeling the links, you're actually defining the relationship between thoughts. And here's something that really Microsoft, the Windows folder structure, you can't define why a folder is sitting inside another folder without adding that into a document or some type of additional file that explains why it's there, or giving it a really long file name or folder name. Here we can actually define why two thoughts are linked. So if Steve is also going to manage the reach out ad campaign, I can right click on this and set up a thought type if I've already defined this. I'll define a thought type in just a moment. But there you can see I can say he's the account lead. So Steve is taking the lead on the reach out ad campaign. What is Lisa Swanson doing? Maybe Lisa is just observing. So I'm going to click on the link between those two thoughts. And if I double click, it opens up the link properties. I'll wait till you're seeing that on your screen as well. There it is. I've selected it, and there it's highlighted. So now I can define the relationship between these two thoughts. So Lisa's role is to simply observe how everything is going with the reach out ad campaign. I can even change the color if I want. You can really get fancy with this. Make a nice light blue link, and even change the link thickness if that's important to you, to make some links really, really bold, other links very tiny, etc. I'll just go to the default. But here's what I really want to share with you is I can create a directional link. So Lisa is observing, and I'll set up an arrow. So is reach out observing Lisa? No, Lisa is observing. So I'll click again to change the direction. So Lisa Swanson, as you can see, actually I clicked away before saving it. Let me click on that again. There we go. So Lisa Swanson's role is to observe the reach out ad campaign. So I can set up a little arrow there so I know directionally this person reports to that person, or this person is responsible for this project and not a team member of the project. So it's really up to you when to use those directional links, but you can also set them up as one-way links. So I'll leave you with this final component, more advanced feature of the brain. I'm going to give Lisa Swanson since she's observing the reach out ad campaign. When I'm working on the reach out ad campaign, I don't need to know that Lisa Swanson is observing our progress and how we're putting this project together, if this is a shared brain that multiple people have access to. So that doesn't affect me. That doesn't change how I set up new meetings or create new presentations, etc. It's up to Lisa to really just sit back and observe and see how things are going. So I'm going to set up a one-way link. When I'm on the reach out ad campaign, I don't need to know that Lisa is observing. So I'm going to open up the link properties for the link between Lisa and reach out. And I'm going to check the box that says that this is a one-way link. So, oops, I changed the direction there. Change it back. And so now this tells me that Lisa Swanson is observing reach out, but it's a one-way link. It only appears from the Lisa Swanson pod. When I'm on reach out, notice that Lisa Swanson link is not there. It's not a two-way link. You can't see it in both directions, just one. But if I navigate over to my Tier 2 support team, I think Lisa's currently the only member. There she is. And when I'm on Lisa's thought, I can see that she is observing the reach out ad campaign. So that's a one-way link, a very specialty link that is only used in certain scenarios, but when you need it, it's really, really beneficial. Once again, if I click back over to reach out ad campaign and activate that thought, sorry, reach out. There we go. If I click back to the reach out ad campaign, Lisa Swanson thought is no longer appearing. If I navigate from Lisa's, she'll appear there for a while until the screen has a chance to refresh. And then because it's a one-way link, that link will not be displayed. So I'll leave you with that fantastic little feature within TheBrain, the one-way links. Enjoy using those and adding those as you continue to cultivate, garden, and expand your brain. So hopefully today's webinar has been very helpful in sharing with you some more advanced features of the application. Actually, I did see one question came up that we're going to be answering in our Q&A. It's something that I didn't get a chance to do, but it's a very important process. And it's about segmenting a brain, taking a very large brain and segmenting just a small area of that brain into a smaller topic-specific brain. You can merge brains together or segment them out. And I saw that the question came in from Spence regarding this. So I'm going to go into that in just a bit. So please do stay with me during the QA to see how to segment a brain, and I'll also answer these additional questions as well. The first question came in from Sammy. How do you ensure your personal information entered into your brain is secure? So brains are password protected. So when you create a brain account, you create your login and your password. I need my password even to log into the brain application from the desktop application. And if I want to make sure my brain is secure, I can log out of the brain before I step away from my desk. Syncing the brain to the cloud, also very secure. And I can send you a note if you do want full details about our encryption process. We use the same type of encryption used at the US government. Don't have that information all off the top of my head, but it's a secure upload, storage, and download of the brain. Even administrators to the server, when you sync your brain to the brain cloud, that's actually an Azure server. And even those of us that are admins on that server do not have access to your brain data. We would need your password. Your password is encrypted, it's salted and hashed. I have no access to get to your password. If you forget your password and you call support, all I can do is give you the process for resetting a new password, and it gets sent to your email. I cannot provide you with your password. So very, very secure. We're very proud and very comfortable and happy with our security of brains that are available on the Brain Cloud. So for further details, in-depth details, send a note into support@thebrain.com. We're happy to answer that question for you. And Sammy asked, what I mean by secure is private only to you. So yes, even if I sync this brain, I'll share this with you really quickly. If I click on online, notice I've got this brain set up to sync automatically. But let's take a look at the brain access and sharing. So for this particular brain, I am allowing public access. This is a sample brain. These are not my companies and my clients. This is a sample brain. I don't share my business brain on brain webinars because I keep everything in my brain. Invoices, contracts, passwords, phone numbers, it's all there in my brain. I absolutely know it's secure when I sync it to the cloud. And for those brains, I do not have this box checked, public access. So nobody has access to that brain but me. There's the URL for the brain. This is the sort of shortcut, sort of like a bit.ly URL, but the full URL is much longer. This URL would not be generated if you don't click on allowing public access. So it's a very long, convoluted URL. And even if you were to guess the URL, you would have to log in to access that brain if you do not have this box checked. So this is a publicly accessible brain. So I do have this box checked, and I do share this URL so people can visit this brain in read-only mode from time to time. With our brains, I've got team brain access, which means I can share brains with other users as editors. So you can see Brigitte is a writer, Harlan is a reader on this brain, and Travis is also a writer. So other people have editor access to this brain as well. So hopefully that answers your questions. Again, we can get into the nitty-gritty of security if you want to send a note into support@thebrain.com. And Ron asked, is there a list of shortcuts, example, space between letters while searching to find thoughts, starting with two separate words? Oh, like yes, I typed in like the two letters. PDF form? If not, could you create such a resource? That's a great idea, Ron. I'm going to make a note of that suggestion. It doesn't exist. It is in our manual. If you go to thebrain.com/support, there's a link to the full Brain 9 manual. The Brain 10 manual is currently a transition guide from 9 into 10. But all of those details are in the manual. That being said, obviously, it's a very large manual, 200 pages or more. So a nice little PDF of shortcuts is a great idea, and I'm going to make a note of that and generate that hopefully in the future. So Spence had the next question regarding segmenting out a brain. So let's get to that. Now that you know all about the selection box, it's a very simple and quick process. Let's say this reach out ad campaign. This is how I keep track of my information at the company here in the Brain. And Steve Gibson looks over my shoulder one day and says, "What? This is fantastic. Now that I'm leading this reach out project, can you send me a copy of this area of your brain?" So if I were to just share the Brain online, make it publicly accessible, send Steve the link, or if Brain gets a, if Steve gets a Brain account, I could add him as a reader for this Brain, and he could download a local read-only copy. In this scenario, I only want to give him access to the reach out area. I've got corporate phone numbers and clients and invoices on other contracts and people that Steve doesn't necessarily need access to. So I just want to give him this area of my brain. So I'm going to control click on reach out. That adds reach out into the selection box. Now I could control drag a big square around other thoughts that I want to add. If you remember, I can control click on a gate to add and remove. There I accidentally added this team site 1. I'll control click to take that out of the selection box. So I can navigate around and click thought by thought or group by group and add that into the selection box to copy and send to him. There's a faster way to populate this selection box. I've control clicked on reach out, and now I'll go up to edit and select to select related thoughts. So edit, select related thoughts, and now I can specify, telling the selection box, take every child thought for, we'll say 10 generations, and say okay. So notice I could say every parent thought or every jump thought. It really depends on sort of how your brain is constructed. We give you many different options. Or I could say add every thought in any direction for 5 generations out. In this case, I want reach out and everything below reach out. I could have also specified jump thoughts because I've got a lot of those down below, but that's okay. For this example, we already have 37 selected thoughts now that have been added into the selection box. And I'm going to right click and copy those 37 thoughts. Before I move into a new brain, I want to show that you can also copy as a text outline, paste that into Word if you're turning in a proposal or a document and you just need an outline of your data. I can copy a text outline with the notes. All the thoughts have notes, so that includes the notes in the text box. And of course, the other features that we mentioned today are available there. So in this case, I'm copying the thoughts onto my clipboard. I can go ahead and close that now, and I'm going to create a new brain. So create brain. This brain is for Steve Gibson. So that's the name of my new brain. And anytime you create or open an existing brain, in particular when you create a new one, it's going to select a random theme or wallpaper. So it selected one of these wallpapers. I'm going to just change it over to classic dark blue. It's easy to see. And oh, my colors might only go on a light background. So I'm going to actually change this. Right click, brain theme. I'll change this to a light blue because everything was copied from that previous brain. All the backgrounds, all the thought types, all the notes, all the file attachments, everything that was added into the selection box, 100% copied onto my clipboard. So now I can simply right click and select to paste those 37 thoughts that I copied. So that's a lot of data. I've got Excel spreadsheets, PDF file attachments, PowerPoints, font types, colors, wallpapers, all kinds of things. And so it does take a moment. I'll just let that wheel spin, but eventually the entire structure as it was copied will be pasted here under Steve Gibson. This is a brain that I'm willing to share with Steve. It doesn't have any of those other thoughts in that very massive brain that I have with well over 1,000 thoughts. It just has, there it is, everything below the reach out ad campaign. So you can still see reach out as an active project, so the thought type is there. There's that Amazon server that we set up together, Europe, Hawaii, Canada, all of our travel plans, everything, the notes, the links, all there in this particular brain, and now ready to share with Steve. So I can sync it to the cloud and give him that URL, or if Steve is also a brain user, I'll click on File and back this up to a brain archive. Now Steve is a different account than me, so I'll say anyone can extract the BRZ file that I'll create. And I'll just move this right onto the desktop. And I've backed my entire brain up into a single file, just this Steve Gibson. That's on my desktop. So if I move these things out of the way, you'll see there it is. This is a file I can send off in an email over to Steve. He can extract it and continue on using. Now we're not collaborating. So if Steve makes a change on his end, I won't see that on my end. I'm basically giving this brain to Steve, and it's his now. If we want to collaborate, that's another project, or I guess I would say that's another product that we offer, which is Team Brain, so which we won't really have a lot of time to talk about today. I've got a few more questions now. So now that I've shared that smaller segmented brain with Steve, Marco asked, I'd like to know how to make personal icons. So yes, when I talked earlier about my icons. All right, Marco, follow along. It's a very, very simple process, and I think it's actually kind of a lot of fun. The fastest way, I think, to get there is to click on Help, and under Help, select to open the log directory. So the brain is keeping a log of everything sort of that's going on in the background. If you ever have a problem or question about your brain, you want to talk to someone in support, sometimes we ask for this output.log file just to see if your brain is having problems reading a particular file, or it's not syncing because it can't get through your firewall. So this output.log file will diagnose. But I'm just going to back up one level from the logs directory into the brain. Now, I encourage you, don't touch anything in this directory. I obviously don't want you to break your brain. If you delete something that you think you don't need, your entire brain might no longer be functional. But there is one category in this list that you can play around with, and that's this icons directory. So here are all, if you create a new folder, that folder will show up in your list, and anything that you drop into that folder, we always prefer, or we recommend, that you use a 48 by 48 PNG file. If you don't know much about icons, I would suggest you sort of leave this area alone, but you can create, and notice I even have my own, where's Matt? I do it with a little underscore. So these are icons that I use most often. A clear icon, so nothing shows up. There's certain scenarios when I like doing that. Things I really like, I'll put this heart, or I'll put the star. And I didn't realize I would be embarrassing myself on the call today, but there's a little picture of me. So that's one of the icons I use. So if a project in a collaborative group, if I want to take ownership of that project and I want people to know about it, I put my picture there so that people can see my face and they know, like, oh, Matt's working on this. So I set up a thought tag with Matt, or even a thought type. Matt owns this thought type. Just sort of a fun little thing to add into the brain, but also very useful. If someone sees a picture of me on a thought, they know that I sort of have ownership of that thought for the time being in a collaborative group. So anyhow, I encourage you, yes, in this area of the brain, go ahead, create your own new little folder and drop some icons in there. Again, 48 by 48 PNG files. You don't want a giant JPEG or a BMP, a bitmap file, and it doesn't read ICO files, icon. It reads JPEGs and PNGs, preferably 48 by 48 PNG. And Lee had the next question. With the hidden ordering method, .01, can you extend that to 3 digits? Yes, you certainly can. .001, .002. Again, I always recommend that you skip a few spaces. So you can always go back and weave in new thoughts into your ordering system as they come along. Absolutely, three-digit ordering system is absolutely fine. And I do see that we're going much over the time, so I'm just going to limit to the next 3 questions I see. So Joycelyn and Morcom, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I'm sorry. Those are going to be the next questions. Joycelyn asked, is there a way to sort the selection, the same sort as thoughts or better, other sort? Oh, sort the selection box. No, unfortunately, the selection box, that's a great question, Joycelyn. The selection box will be formatted as you add them. So in other words, if I say control click on Europe and then control click on reach out, even though reach out is above Europe here in the Plex, over in my selection box, it's just a list of thoughts as I add them. So if I just randomly click on thoughts, it's going to add them in that order, and then click here, it adds all of those. But if I copy this, if I right click and regardless of the order, if I right click and copy as a text outline, I'll now open my text editor. I use Notepad++, right click and paste. Notice it does put reach out at the top, and then in an alphabetical order all of the other thoughts, or not alphabetical, but regardless of, I wonder how that is being ordered. I noticed that it kind of jumps around a little bit. Oh, it's reading the .01, .02, so it's an alphabetical order, but it takes into account your .01, .02, so February 2009 meeting notes has a .0 something in front of it now. So it does clean it up for the outline view. If you're copying that, don't worry about the order it's appearing in the selection box. It's still going to look good when you paste it as an outline. And Morcom asked, can I retrospectively password protect an existing brain? So really, the only way that a brain is password protected is through your account. So if I were to log out of the brain, and before I show you this window, I want to, in full disclosure, let you know, I test brains on different servers that we have at the Brain Technologies. I've got a lot of different testing accounts. So I've got a lot of different brain logins. Most people's brain login window does not look like this. So if I log out of the brain, now I'm completely logged out. And to get to the brain, anytime someone else comes to, if I'm at a temporary workstation, the brain is installed, I can log into the brain. And I log out before I leave so that the password protection of my brain is in my account. I say, all right, I want to log in. And now once I log in, it's going to show me all brains that I have available to me with that account. All my local brains will have a little picture of a computer here. Synced brains have these little radio icons that telling me that that brain is synced. And if I scroll down, here's some cloud brains. So the thumbnail is still loading up. But I've got cloud brains down below. Hopefully that's showing up on your screen. So these brains are only available in the cloud. And my internet connection is a little slow, so it hasn't shown those icons yet for those thumbnails. But that means it's only available in the cloud. I need to click, and it's going to ask me if I want to download that brain. So all my cloud brains are accessible, as well as local and previously synced brains. And it's protected through my password with my brain account. And then the last question Morcom asked is, currently, do I have to log in to my brain? So yes, you need to log into the account to get to your brain. So anyone with the brain, if you're just getting started with the brain, you decided to jump ahead to the brain 202 today, you will need to create a brain account. And creating a brain account is free. The brain application, we do have an option for a free version of the brain. Here, let me pull the brain over onto the screen here. I go to the brain. So here we are at TheBrain.com, and if you click on login and you don't yet have an account, you can create your own free account. It remembers me, so it's logging me in with my credentials. So again, you'll see all of those thumbnails that are available to me, but I'll log out and notice that there's a button. Let's log out one more time. Log out, and there we go. So if you're new to TheBrain, visit www.thebrain.com, click on login, and there's a little sign up button. So you can create your account, set up your password. You can go back and modify and change your password, obviously, at any time. And that is what keeps your brain secure. So I really want to thank everyone for joining me today. It's always, I so much enjoy giving my Brain 101 classes and introducing people to the brain for the first time. I'm sure the majority of today's visitors are familiar with the Brain 101, have taken the class, and now have sat through a Brain 202. So you're ready to take your brain to the next level, start cleaning up those areas that have become sort of a catch-all for all of your data and information, for easier access and better management of your data in your digital brain. If you do have questions in the future or questions that I didn't get to, please feel free to send those into support@thebrain.com. We're happy to hear from you and answer any additional questions that you may have. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your week, and most importantly, enjoy your brain. Thanks, everyone.